Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the Two for Talking podcast. And we are live on Twitch. What is happening?
Oh, no.
Do you hear that?
What an auspicious beginning. I don't hear anything, Corey.
No, the clearest
hear
it
me?
sounded in weeks.
What is going on? You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. Joe, I think Corey's high. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm not the one in Colorado. The people in Colorado are.
I won't be there until tonight, so I don't know.
I think we're good now. Hey, everybody! Welcome to the Two for Talking podcast. This is our first live dip of our toes into it, and obviously had technical difficulties right off the bat. But welcome in, and we're brought to you as always by the Neophis Insurance Group, and we'll hear more about them later. But first of all, guys, this past week, we'll recap that. The Penguins have the trade deadline looming, and we'll get into what might happen, who's going to move, and what and where and why. But this past week was not great. Nothing gets Joe sadder than the Flyers beating the Penguins 6-1. Didn't even want to text Joe during that game. Then they come back and they win at home. So, okay, they're even up. And then this weekend happens and, they give up goals on the first shot, 3 straight games. So, what solves that? Bringing up Tristan Jarry, doesn't it, Josh?
And at the same time, I wasn't shocked because if anybody's watched the Penguins goaltending in the last week between Blomqvist and Ned, they're not any worse than Jarry was when he was up, quite honestly. But I think there's multiple reasons for this. I think Blomqvist's confidence is really shot right now. And, to put a kid behind this team probably isn't in any young goaltender's best interests. So I think we know that. And I think the bigger thing right now, I think Miroshov and Blomqvist both need to play. They need to play a lot. And so now you can have Miroshov play in Wheeling. Blomqvist can be the guy in Wilkes-Barre. And they can play in playoff games. It's not NHL caliber, but that's okay given their ages. I think it's important that they aren't blocked by anybody. And right now, those guys, when you're looking at the long-term health of the Penguins, they're more important than Tristan Jarry is because I think we know the Penguins have pretty much written him off. But there's no other place to put Tristan, let's be frank. And his goaltending, as bad as it's been, isn't going to be worse than what we've seen. So this is where we are when a goaltender gives up 13 goals in his last 3 American Hockey League games and he gets recalled to the National Hockey League, Joe. You don't see that every day.
No, but I take umbrage to Corey coming at me at the beginning of the show, only because I literally forgot. I've done so many hits last week. I forgot where we left off. Yeah, we did leave off, and then we lost 6-1 in Philly. But I thought Thursday was the greatest game I've seen in 6 or 7 years. I loved every freaking second of it. First of all, my man, Boku Imama laying the wood to the biggest piece of garbage in the NHL. I'd give 10 years of my life to run that son of a bitch. I've hated Garnett Hathaway since he was a Calgary Flame. He was like a sparkler up there. He needed someone to knock his head off. He was born a Flyer, and Boku Imama did. And none of those puke creamsicles even had the nuts to go over and push him. They wanted no part of him. And, that's a good Tortorella. Oh, that's the worst hit I've seen. Yeah, you employed Dubinsky, you moron. And then old school Gino Machino with the game tire and then the game-winning goal in overtime. That was the win of the decade, as far as I'm concerned. I had so much fun. I was going to jump off a bridge at 3-0, and then we came back and we injured him. It was the best. I mean, really, it couldn't have been a better game. The weekend, then it's funny because I love the Rat, but as soon as I saw the Rat go down, I thought of our old friend Stan Savran, because for some reason Stan really hated the Rat. I was thinking, well, come on. So the one time we don't play Imama. I don't know why Imama didn't play. He gave the team a lift. And he doesn't play against the big bad Bruins. We came back, made that game look interesting. And then if you didn't enjoy yesterday, You don't like hockey. I know we lost, but who cares if we won? We scored 5 goals. It was the most exciting game in years. I mean, fun. This is what hockey's all about, fellas.
Joe, you're worked up. I love it. Listen, that Flyers game on Thursday, I go in the locker room after the game, and literally all the reporters are surrounding Ryan Graves because he's got an assist. Like, well, I don't care that much. And I see Boko sitting by himself. And it occurred to me, like, that Penguins Flyers game on Thursday finally felt like a Penguins Flyers game, right? There was some violence, there was some entertainment, there were comebacks, some crazy stuff going on. Torts losing his mind. Like, I said, well, I have to go speak with this gentleman. So I said, Boko, what happened? And he explained that he didn't think it was a dirty hit. And then he said, he made some comment about it. He asked him to fight and he didn't want to. I said, wait a second. I said, you're telling me you offered an invitation to drop the gloves. And he said, yeah, like 2 or 3 times. The guy didn't want to fight me. So he basically said, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And it was certainly an entertaining scene. I remember the day Hathaway went to Philly, I tweeted, like, this guy was born a Flyer. Like, with all due respect to the Capitals, wherever else he's been, he is such of a Flyer. I mean, he's actually a perfect fit there. And you mentioned your buddy Torts. I actually talked with Torts. I went over to his media scrum afterwards, and he and I talked for a couple of minutes afterwards. And he didn't want to come out and say it. Deep down, Torts likes Boko. That's his kind of guy. And he even said to me, it's like the league needs guys like that. And I know he wasn't trying to hurt him. Like, so deep down, it's actually his kind of a guy. But he has to say things, I think, publicly to defend his guy, which I get. But it had all the drama of Penguins Flyers that Penguins Flyers is supposed to have. And after what we saw 2 nights earlier in Philly, which to me was the worst performance of the season, that was the night I felt like a lot of guys kind of put the white flag up on the season. And then you fall behind 3-0. I'm thinking, oh, man, this is ugly. And to come back, at least the Penguins-Flyers rivalry has some life again. That's the way I looked at it.
When you had the Nedeljkovic, on the night of honoring Max Talbot's shush, like, I think, Josh, you might have tweeted it, or one of your cohorts tweeted, that, like, hey, go figure, on this night, somebody's going to the bench and showing a bunch of emotion, whether it was for whatever reason, sparked a comeback from 3-0 against the Flyers. So,
Corey, you know what I thought, Corey, too, when watching it live from the press box, it felt like all of Ned's anger was actually towards Sullivan. Like, my initial take was, I think he's pissed that he's being yanked, because 2 of the goals really weren't his fault at all. That was initially, and I guess it wasn't, but from afar, I was like, is he going nuts, like showing up the coaches here? What's going on? But some of the guys afterwards basically said, nah, he was just swearing at us because he wasn't very impressed. And I give Ned credit for that. You're in a locker room with Hall of Famers, guys who have Stanley Cup rings, and he is neither of those things. I actually think it takes some guts just to come out and do that. And it shows you how much the guy cares. So he might not be the greatest goalie in the world, but I think he's a good teammate. And I have the utmost respect for that guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I thought he was kind of maybe yelling at the forwards, like defense. Like,
should have been.
I mean, we saw over the weekend, too. I mean, how many times? I think it was against the Flyers. One of the shots, he had like 4 people standing in front of him, and 3 of them were Penguins. So, but we bring up Tristan Jarry, Josh, and like you said, he's given up 13 goals. And the most important thing, like, yeah, Murashov and Blomqvist need to play, and they need to play a ton. And clearly, Blomqvist is not ready for the NHL. First of all, what's it going to be like seeing Tristan Jarry in the locker room? Because I know you and him have a really peachy relationship, and is he going to be all chummy with the media now that he's back?
I don't know. If I were him, I'd be in a bad mood that I got caught up and then have to play the Avs tomorrow night, maybe. Couldn't you have a game against the Sharks before you call me up or something? I don't know that he's going to play. Like, Tristan and I have never had it out or anything. I don't think he likes the media much in general. I get that sense. It's just not very comfortable for him. He's a different kind of guy. But I'll be honest, Corey, I didn't really expect to see him again this season at the NHL level, and I think that was the plan. I just think Blomqvist was so god awful the last few outings that they're put the Penguins and Dubas and Sullivan in a very difficult spot. You can't let this kid just get ambushed every single game and look completely lost like he has his last few starts. And I actually like this decision the more I think about it. Like, it's kind of win-win for the Penguins. If Jarry shits the bed over and over again, guess what? They're not making the playoffs. The draft standing gets a little better. Maybe you have more clarity on him. If he suddenly starts playing well, okay, that makes everyone feel good. Maybe at some point in the future, somebody will take him off your hands. So really, it's kind of in a weird way, a win-win for the Penguins, and your two best goalie prospects just get to play every night. So I think you add it all up that they didn't really have much choice, probably.
It's tanking without tanking.
Kind of. Yeah.
That's like the best way to, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, and I thank you, Joel, for the Flyer game. But other than that, he's been terrible.
Yeah.
And Ned hasn't been much better.
No.
But Bloomquist has been terrible, and you can say what you want about the defense, but at some point you gotta make a save.
Yes. Oh,
I mean, it's downright ludicrous. Some of the shots that went by him. I think I said it last week. It's like when you're playing Sega and you think it's a glitch. Like the shots are going through him.
Well, do you guys ever remember? Did you play the N64 game Wayne Gretzky 3D Hockey? Do you remember that?
I never
at all?
played that one. No.
So if your goaltender turned into a brick wall, literally it was programmed into the game. The next shot, no matter where it came from, was going in. And that's how I feel like whenever the Penguins take the opening draw, I'm like, get it out, get it out, get it out.
Well, the first shot of the game now has become an event. I mean, it really has. I mean, you're just like waiting. It doesn't matter if it's some random shot from the point or if it's pasta on a breakaway. It doesn't matter. The first shot of the game now has everybody's attention. It's been, 13 times? I put a stat in my article the other day that, now granted, the number's gone up since then, but at the time, teams, when they take their first shot of the game against the Penguins, they were shooting at 19%. And that was Mario's shooting percentage in his career. So it's kind of like Mario's taking the first shot against the Penguins on every game. Like that's the percentage we're talking about here. I've never seen anything quite like it. We think they have tied a record. It was the 11-12 Flyers, I think, also did it 13 times. It was mainly Brizgalov giving up the first shot of the game. I think the records have only been kept on that since like 2010, I want to say. So it doesn't go back real far, but we might be watching some history here. And when you're down 1-0, 20% of the time after the first shot, like it's kind of hard to come back from that. The goaltending is, and you know what the weird thing though about the whole first shot, first goal thing is? The 13, like 10 of them were like breakaways or tap-ins. Like they actually usually aren't bad goals. The goaltender saved those for the other ones, but goal prevention is not this team's strength, Joe. I think we've learned that.
No, and what's funny, Josh, is think of the first month of the season of how many 2-0 leads we blew. So there's never don't show up late in a Penguin game. You're missing goals.
No.
We're either down 2-0 or up 2-0. I remember all those games we just up 2-0. It was like a curse. There was always 3-2 the other team by the end of the first. I mean, it's
a really good point. I mean, think about all those poor bastards that get stuck in the Liberty Tunnel and miss all this stuff when they miss the first 5 minutes.
or in my case, when I realized it's like on TNT, like, oh, I'm all relaxed, like driving home in traffic. Like, oh, well, I'll just start. I'm not going to put the radio on, so I'll just catch it in the first. Like, oh my God, it was a TNT game.
You forget your password for HBO Max.
forget the first 20, missed the first 20 minutes. But I really thought they played pretty good against Toronto, and there's something to be said. Sully is these guys still play hard. I am just underwhelmed by his line combinations, and I sound like a broken record. But how the hell Tomasino? I thought Glass on the fourth line looked about right. How Tomasino isn't with Gino? I mean, one guy with a little artistic creativity. How he's not with Gino all the time? I don't understand.
I have the sense, and this is nothing that Sully or anyone has said to me. I have the sense Tomasino's the kind of guy that gets under coach's skin sometimes. I think he had that reputation in Nashville. I just have that sense that even though he has obvious talent that sticks out, that he has some bad habits in his game, maybe that drive coaches nuts. But I agree with you. If you're trying to figure out the top six and looking at the pure skill level on this team, he should be in the top six. He's absolutely, after Raquel and Rust, like who's a more talented winger than him, especially with Bunting out of the lineup. And he scored goals in each of the games against Philly, pretty goals, I might add. And I know, Joe, that guys who score goals against Philly, of course, he's an Italian kid who scores goals against Philly. He's right up your alley.
Yeah, I mean, he's right underneath Rusty is, not in, he's not on Mount Rushmore, but he's the next level, like because I think Beauvillier,
Mm-hmm.
who I was a big fan of when he was a fisherman and he kind of floated around for a while. I think he's going to be the first guy to go because I can't see a team not wanting him.
Yeah,
at the deadline. So then when you don't have Beauvillier, well, then who the Danton Heinen? Like someone's got to play with Gino. How can that be Tomasino?
No. I mean, I completely agree. Cody Glass is one of those guys. When you watch him in practice, he looks the part. Like he has talent. He does. Like the way he can skate and handles the puck. Like you kind of see why a scout would like him, why he'd be a first round pick. But the reality is it's March 3rd and he has 4 goals. Like, and it's not like he hasn't been given ample opportunity to play with good players. He's played with Gino a good bit this season. He's played in the top 9 most of the season. The finishing isn't there. I don't think he goes to the net nearly enough. I think he's way too much of a perimeter guy. I don't understand some of the thinking behind that either. Tomasino's a guy, like, more times than not, I like him. Yeah. Like, okay, maybe he's not good defensively. Well, shit, nobody on this team's good defensively. Like, try to win a game 6-5 every now and then. That's okay. Keep the big guys happy. Let them play with somebody who can score a little bit. And he's young too. I think he's 23 years old. Like, there is real untapped potential in him. You want to see more of him.
Well, Cody Glass is like an underwhelming Drew O'Connor.
And Drew O'Connor was kind of underwhelming to begin with. So
that's the joke. I mean, right. Like at least Drew O'Connor looked like he might score.
Right.
Glass doesn't even look like he's going to score.
No, it's you're right. It's a real problem. The lack of talent at the wing in general right now. It hasn't been this bad in a long time. You really notice it, of course, when Rust is out of the lineup. He missed, of course, a couple of games with the illness, but that's part of the problem. They're going to keep Rust with Raquel and Sid. I understand that line is really good, so I understand why they do it. But man, when you give Sid both of those guys, it really, like, I feel for Gino on many nights. I know Gino is not what he was, but man, look at who he's playing with this season. Like, the fact that his point totals aren't worse is actually kind of impressive. I mean, Michael Bunting's been his best regular winger all season. He's not exactly Rocket Richard. So you look at some of the other guys he's had to play with. Man, Gino has certainly had it tough in that regard.
I think he was the player of the week. I think he had the best week of anybody. And him and Sid, Rusty, Raquel, they're not giving up. No. And that's what really gets me about. Now O'Connor's gone, but I thought he had he had some fire in him. He didn't have a mean streak in him, but he has some fire. But can Cody Glass get some fire or a mean streak? Can we get somebody besides that little poodle, Michael Bunting, to have a little fire in their ass? I mean, that's what the team needs. That's what we haven't had, really in 5 years.
Yeah, and
I mean, Rust has, like, can we get someone not on the top 4, like the top 3, top line that has, how is our bottom 6 less aggressive than our top 6?
No, and there was a scene I witnessed, Joe, sometimes my job gives me certain privileges. I see things when the cameras aren't on that other people don't see. And it was the game in Philly Tuesday night, which I think we can all agree was a really embarrassing performance for the Penguins. And the media goes back toward the locker room. They always, usually about 5 minutes after the game ends, the media is allowed in the locker room. And we walk into the locker room, and right before we could get through the door, number 87 and number 71 like storm out of the locker room, which is very rare, especially for Sid. He usually sits and talks to the media. Those two were so pissed, I think, just at what they had witnessed, what they had been a part of, that they stormed out, and Rusty and Crystal Tang were right behind them. And I know it wasn't intended this way, but it almost came across as like, go talk with those guys about it for once. Like, what else can we do? And that it was frankly understandable because it was an embarrassing performance, but you don't see that very often. And I think there's just too many guys on this team, the lack of intensity that we see at times. And I could call out names, but it's half the team. I think we all know who they are when we watch them. It's definitely an issue.
Well, in Philly too, Josh. I mean, that's why I say all the time, Sid, Gino, they hate him much. I do. Rusty, he's been in the wars. Like, hey, you want to not show up? San Jose will hit the hotel pool. Not Philadelphia.
No.
and I would, before we start talking all the trade stuff, I want to just get into like some of the things I'm missing here now. Can we get Hayes off the top power play now? Especially if it's going to be, they're going to be out there for an 150. Then Gino, because now it seems like Rusty's used to be with Gino, because now the number 2 power play has nobody. It's terrible. Like that doesn't work for me. And Mama, the one guy that brings energy, the one guy that brings toughness. How is he? I mean, Emil Benstrom is a better option, especially, heaven forbid, somebody touched Prince Willie or Austin Matthews. Then we're going to have Reeves running around.
No, I agree. I'm a Boko guy. And by the way, Boko has not hurt them one time defensively. He's fine. He's fine. And he does. I know it's a cliche to say it, but he brings a certain energy to the game. He absolutely does. We saw this very first game in Seattle. I was like, this guy's all right. Like, this actually, this is a physical element that the Penguins never have. And you can tell his teammates love him. And as I've said time and time again, for tough guys like that, I know there are people out there who say, well, that doesn't deter anything. Well, okay, that's fine. Ask Sid and Gino if they like having him on the team. I promise you, because I've done it. The answer is yes. And if that makes Sid and Gino feel a little better, then he should be out there, especially right now. When, again, if you had 4 great lines to roll, great. Like, guess what? The 4th line's not going to score one way or the other. At least have that element out there of toughness. He draws penalties. He does provide energy. It's so cliched, but he really does. So I'm a little surprised that he was taken out of the lineup. I know that hit that he threw on Hathaway was Joe's favorite moment of the season, and I don't even think it was close.
No, well, it was completely my favorite moment of the season. And here's the thing. And then Philly didn't even run around and try to get back, because they're like, nobody won any part of him. And then I'll tell you, I love the Rat, but he almost didn't even hit Marchand.
Yeah, that was
almost didn't even hit him. And then they're running around. It's like, you think they would have ran around if Boku was out there? No, they wouldn't have.
No.
You know what I mean?
No
so
question.
It's like, so I don't understand. It's not 2016, and we're not just better than everybody. And quite frankly, if I'm buying a ticket, I want to see him and not Emil Benstrom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's worth the price of admission just to watch him knock a flyer out. I mean, Joe'd pay. You'd probably do your Yager trip all over again if you knew that was happening.
Yeah, we've seen enough Emil Bemstroms over the years. I think we can agree on that.
But the sad thing is, he's not even that. He's actually, he's better than Nieto.
Yes.
I mean,
for sure.
It's just, no, enough of the vanilla. That's it. Just get some. I don't know.
I don't know what his
I'm sorry, like. Corey, because I thought I would start this with the Penguins, because I'm actually positive this week. I actually really enjoyed this week of hockey. We almost came back. We scared Boston, and and got Toronto. All those pansies up there. Oh man, we should be sure. Well, we almost beat you.
Yeah,
and we spied you 2 goals, and we have a glorified parking cone as a goaltender. So shut up, Canada.
No, I actually agree with you. I mean, overall, I think the team's playing better. And we just talked about they don't have wingers, but they're scoring wise. It's not like they're like the 30th overall scoring team.
No,
if their defense was just respectable and their goaltending wasn't a joke, this team would be okay.
As bad as the Penguins are, make no mistake, this is not a good team. They have the 2nd worst goal differential in hockey. Like, they are what they are. The amazing thing, what I find interesting about the Penguins, and also how horrible the Eastern Conference is, if the Penguins had league average goaltending this season, they'd be right there in the playoff spot. They actually would, because the power play, they can score. The power play's been way better this season. They still have some star power. And we've seen they're a weird team, because they can have stretches here and there where they actually look pretty good. Like we saw it around Christmas when they went on that. It was 11-3-1 before the Christmas break. We see these stretches from that team when they look competent, at least. But ultimately, the goaltending has betrayed them so much, and the overall team defense has betrayed them so much that you can't take them seriously. And yet, I give them credit for what they did this weekend. I actually thought they played pretty well in both of those games, all things considered. I know everybody wants them to tank. They're not trying to tank. They may end up in the bottom 5 or 6 of the standings anyway because of just the incompetence between the pipes. But they were still playing hard, and they've played it. Especially, I was thinking about Sid again. Like, he had a 3-point game yesterday. He hasn't gone more than like 2 days without playing a game in a month, I think. Like, the schedule he's had, going back to the gold medal game, like, it's every other. Even today, you play two games Saturday, Sunday, fly to Denver Monday, have to play again Tuesday. Like, it's just a relentless stretch of schedule for him.
Hey, Corey, I have 3 more points.
Yeah, no, go for
I
it.
just love talking Pens. One is that now I forgot 2 of them. One is, that we said beginning of the year. Well, last year we did a playoff team if we have a better power play and competent goaltending. Well, this year we got the better power play. We didn't have competent goaltending. I think a big part of this season, and this is on Dubas, I know he was personally being a nice guy to Lars Eller, but man, we could have used Lars Eller up until this week. I mean, the fact that we have to look, I mean, when Gino got dinged, we had Hayes as our number 2 center. The fact our penalty kill is falling apart. The fact that our power play number 2 could use him. I mean, just in every aspect, we could have used Lars Eller until like Thursday.
You're not wrong.
I mean, thank you. and the third thing is Ryan Shea an NHL defenseman? Shea's played pretty good hockey.
Yeah, I think he's like a number 7 guy on a good team, even, right? He's okay. He gets a little better every year. Now he's filling the net left and right. He's got 3 more goals in the last week than Ryan Graves has points all season. So there is that.
Yeah, I mean, he looked better than Joseph, and I've been on the PO. I'm happy he's back. He's playing okay, but I think Shea took his job.
Oh, PO was so bad that game in Philly.
Yep.
That might have been the coup de grace for him. I'm telling you, there were a lot of people in the organization not happy with his performance. By the way, Corey, I should say, we have a lot of live viewers right now. You should tell them like what they should be clicking on to support the program. It just occurred to me, we're not used to having live viewers like this.
Oh yeah. There's 1,600 people watching. So
hi, everybody.
If you click,
intimidating.
If you're, we're getting close to like KDKA numbers now. We're getting close to the fan numbers 93.7. But go to YouTube, click like, subscribe. You will get notified, and then follow us all. If you're watching on Twitter, follow us there. But then you can also, you'll get this in podcast form later. If you missed anything, you will be able to listen to it anywhere on your podcast devices. But yeah, the PO game, I really felt, I forget what play it was, which one of the goals, he like ended up facing backwards. Like he was not even looking at the play. And it just kind of like, I was like, ugh, like that's a borderline career ender, like just
wasn't good.
Like he didn't belong.
No. Well, that's what happens with him. Like some games he gets pushed around. So it's obvious the coaching staff tells him, hey, you got to be tougher. You got to be more physical. And then he tries almost too hard and goes overboard and gets himself out of position. Not looking good for him right now.
Yeah, and I can also see your YouTube comments, by the way, live, so we can put them on screen. And I have somebody that just said, "LOL, I see 17 people watching." That's on YouTube. This is a combination of the multiple streams it's going to.
Are people calling you a liar, Corey?
Yeah, they are. I mean,
that
might be my wife's account actually, because
it's probably my ex-wife's account. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
If there's one thing I know that isn't entertaining, it's talking about the numbers. That's one thing I do know. What's funny is if you are watching this live and you missed my rant on how much I love beating the Flyers, go back and watch or listen to the podcast from the beginning. That'll never get old. And if you are watching live and listening, please, if you need insurance, which everybody does, you're going to call Bill Neofus, right, Josh?
Bill Neofus. The insurance king of Pittsburgh, who I will be seeing in fabulous Las Vegas this week. He never misses the Penguins Vegas trip. And in fact, we will be seeing Carrot Top as we always do in Vegas. That's become a tradition. Bill's obsession with Carrot Top is, I think, noteworthy. But seriously, if you need insurance in Pittsburgh, any kind of insurance, it doesn't matter. I mean, car insurance, life insurance, renter's insurance, you go on and on. The Neofus Insurance Group, they got you covered. They do everything. They're located very conveniently in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. And they are, in all seriousness, the nicest people on earth. They really are. They will make it comfortable for you. They'll get you great deals. tell them we sent you. But Bill likes that. He always likes to hear that the listeners are being sent in his direction. So give Bill a call. It's 412-364-3388. They will take care of all of your insurance needs.
We
Thank
love
you,
Bill.
And
if you're not going to see Carrot Top this weekend, Saturday night, I'm at Lola Brewery in Lawrenceville.
Ooh,
there's no Penguin game that night, so no excuses. Come on out. Me and Andy and Augie, 3 Pittsburgh Italian Penguin fans. So perfect.
And the beer is great there. I had a few of them last time you were there, so it's a great venue for comedy, and I hope you guys go because Joe's not just because he's a friend, but it's a killer. It's killer. You guys are gonna love it, and there's probably half of it's probably new since I've seen it, 7 months ago. So, I can't say enough about Joe's comedy. Biggest comic out there most. I mean, a lot of people are starting to. I mean, your YouTube special absolutely killed it. You're on Amazon now, so. I don't need to pump your tires too much. You're on Netflix too.
It's a real live celebrity among us.
No, thank you. You're making me blush. Thank you, Corey. I wanted because I'm sorry I kind of pushed Corey a little bit because he's our number one producer. He's the man, and he wanted to talk trades earlier. I'm like, I just have so much fire about that Flyer game. I gotta get out of my system. But I just want to say one thing. So here's the news because we don't prep guys who's watching live. We go with the flow. I thought the biggest news this weekend was now, Josh, were you there? Like, did you catch the scrum? It seemed like Christopher Letang is open to move. Did you catch that? Is that true?
I wasn't in on that scrum, but I think that might have been taken a little out of context.
That's why we have Josh live.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Chris wants to go anywhere. Now I will say his situation is tricky. Because Sid and Gino, they're never going to play anywhere else. I promise you. That sorry, everybody in Denver, but that's not going to happen. Letang, and I've written this before. I'm not convinced that Chris Letang will end his career in Pittsburgh or that he has an incredibly strong desire to do so. Of the big 3, I think he'd be the most willing to leave. And I know he was asked about it yesterday, and he basically said, "Yeah, I've known it's a business since I was 21 or whatever." And I think people kind of ran with that, like, "Oh, what's Chris saying here?" But I don't think it was really anything. And it started because Carlson was asked about it. I know Rob Rossi asked Carlson. I think there was some Catherine Tappan had a report or something about the trade deadline and Carlson basically answered Rob's question. And he said, I do have a no trade clause. I'll use it if I want to. And they haven't asked me to waive it yet, and we'll go from there. And my thought on Carlson is I suspect there are some teams that he would play for, and there are some teams he wouldn't go to. It's very much that simple, and he has all the control, all the power. I don't think he'll be dealt this off or before this deadline. Do I think Carlson could be dealt this summer? Yeah, I do. I think there's a really good chance of it when the cap goes up. But as for Letang, he could go at some time. It wouldn't shock me, but I think people were very eager to get any bit of news they could from the locker room yesterday. And I don't think Chris meant for that to become a story because I don't think he meant it that way.
There you go. You know, what's funny is Carlson really is the house guest and now won't leave.
Yeah.
Little Cato Kalin.
He's like the Seinfeld, the English guy. No, here's your clothes. You're making the airport. Now, the thing with Letang, though, I think Letang's play has really dropped.
Yeah.
And he looks not slow, but he is nowhere near one of the faster players on the ice anymore.
No.
And I think people don't want to hear this, but I think Gino actually looks more like Gino than Letang looks like Letang.
You might be right. I have noticed, especially, I don't know, since Christmas maybe, he doesn't pull away from people like he once did. When Letang goes behind the net, that thing he does where he swoops behind the net and he can just pull away from anybody, he's not doing it anymore. You can see he's still an above average NHL skater, sure, but that dynamic quality that he's always had that makes him so special, you're starting to see it disappear now. Maybe not disappear, but it's not what it was. And that's not good because I don't mean this as an insult to Chris, but he's never been a guy who was a special player because he's cerebral out there. Like he was a special player for all of these years because he's a freakish athlete. And he's just incredibly strong and a better skater than anyone else and so skilled. And you see those physical elements now starting to leave him a little bit. And that's a real problem. I think he's still under contract for 3 more years after this one, I think it is. Those physical skills, they aren't coming back at 37, right? He'll be 38 in April, I believe. That to me is a concern because I see it too. His skating has just always been his greatest weapon. One of the great skaters, really, of all time. If you consider power skating and pure speed and the agility, like how many players that you've ever seen were better skaters than Chris Letang in his prime? Not many. But he's not in his prime anymore, and I think that's pretty clear.
And now he's rely on his mental game.
What's funny though, in his defense, he's made way less more. Easy for me to say, he's made less mistakes.
Oh no, I agree.
He's played a smarter brand of hockey the last 6 months. He just doesn't look nearly as dynamic.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. I would say the same about Gino too. Gino has really cut down. We don't see him taking the offensive zone penalties very often anymore. We don't see him with the high risk passes getting picked off so often anymore. On occasion, I guess. I think Gino's done a great job of kind of adapting to what his physical ability still lets him do.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe we can say the same for Letang, right? But Gino, like since the Four Nations break, Joe, like Gino's kind of looked like old Gino a little bit. You can see that break was great for his legs.
Yeah, and Gino still has his hands. He still makes those tricky plays. I think Gino's had a pretty good year for Gino. That was a really weak hook on him the other night too. Really, I mean, for Hall of Famer, for drop dead Hall of Famer, he gets more ticky tack penalties called against him.
Joe, you're still pissed about bunting and that ridiculous offside that took Gino's highlight reel goal away, like in November.
I certainly am. That I certainly am.
Well, we have the Russian Ovechkin chasing Wayne Gretzky, but we have Gino just adding to his total penalty minutes over Kevin Stevens,
over Artie
Stevens. I just think, to me, Leclerc, Jesus, I don't know where my head is. Carlson and Letang, they just seem like players that, honestly, like if they're not here, I know they're not going to get traded. It'd be great if they were, but I feel like we'd be playing so much better without them. They're players that are good on really good teams, but if they're on a mediocre to less than mediocre team, they're just going to cause problems.
Well, Letang and Carlson, I mean, listen, neither one is what he once was. They're good examples, though, of guys who do things that we take for granted, I think. Like, I promise you the forwards would miss them if they weren't around.
Yeah.
Because they do create offense in ways that most defensemen can't. So you need that. Any good team needs defensemen who can move the puck. But those two, Carlson in particular, as we've discussed ad nauseum this season, the defensive mistakes that he makes, the decisions that he sometimes makes in his own zone. I've never seen anything like it at the NHL level. And this is a guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. This is a first ballot Hall of Famer, a 3-time Norris winner. For a guy who's that accomplished, who has the resume he has, who has the hockey IQ that he has, to make those mistakes, it's just baffling. We certainly saw it again this weekend on a couple of occasions. He just does stuff that's like very much hockey 101. And I don't know if there's a lack of willingness, if there's some kind of like mental lapse or what it is, but coaching Erik Karlsson can't always be fun.
I think Corey makes a great point, though, as far as if you just look back at 2017-18 when Letang was hurt and we had great forwards that, this team could use just a little like off the glass and out. Now, I know they don't have a third and fourth line to create offense. And if it doesn't hit Gino's stick or the top line, nothing's going to happen. Glass is going to dump it in. They'll be right back up our ass. But, there is something to be said. Just a couple, up and outs would probably help this team a lot more than whatever he's trying to do.
There's no question. One of my favorite things to watch now is too. It was the Philly game when Karlsson scored a couple of goals. When was that? Thursday, I guess it was. anytime Carlson does something offensively like that, you always see Letang on his next couple of shifts. It's kind of like anything you can do, I can do better. Like he can't help himself. He was trying like these perfect passes, and you could see he was trying to put on the Ritz, just to try to keep up with Carlson a little bit, even though he would never admit it. It's so obvious when it happens. It's one of my favorite things to watch.
I just saw a scroll grow,
Ryan
Cunningham. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for typing in. And if you're a listener to the show, I think for the last year I've said, we got to keep Raquel. Now everyone's jumping on my bandwagon. I'm like, for $5 million, you're not going to get a better, as soon as he leaves, you'll be looking for a guy at $5 million a year that can play top six. And he's played grittier this year, Josh. And I love his game.
No, me too. No, he's been great. My thinking all along on Raquel, like I will not say he's unmovable. Everybody has a price. If somebody wants to offer something outrageous for him, and I think that's what Kyle Dubas is thinking, quite honestly. If he can get a first-round pick and a really top-notch prospect as well, then you have to think about it. I mean, you do. But there should be no eagerness to trade Raquel, and I don't think there is. We've never seen him play better. He's never had a season this good. He's 31, so he's not young, but he's not old either. I mean, he should be able to play at this level for at least a couple of years longer, I would think. And if you want to trade him, his value is probably even higher next year when the cap goes up. So I don't think the Penguins should feel any urgency, and certainly that line has been fun to watch. But you're right. Raquel, he'd got a little quiet after the Four Nations, but then he really came to life yesterday, which was good to see for the Penguins. So can he be had on a trade? Yeah. Are they just going to give him away the way they might Beauvillier or Grzelcyk? No. The completely different situations.
I'll tell you what, I think someone is going to offer Dubas a number one a first rounder, because there's guys going for second rounders that back in the day were fourth rounders at best.
Well, Florida just gave up a first rounder for what, Seth Jones?
Yeah. They gave up a Spencer Knight also, right?
Yeah.
No, it is, but it's a great thing for the Penguins. You talk about a seller's market. You got a first-round pick for Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson, for Christ's sake. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
The best is Dallas and San Jose. I know Granlund's been better this year, but first-round pick for Granlund and Cody Ceci, like that's the kind of market you're dealing with. And I actually wrote this in The Athletic. I think the article went up about an hour ago. There's, I think, 6 teams in the NHL right now, only 6 that are not within 5 points of a playoff spot. So there aren't many teams that are very clearly sellers. And even some of those teams like Buffalo might not, all they've done is sell for years. There's a lot of people out there who think Buffalo actually wants to add NHL players right now, even if they aren't going to make the playoffs this season. This still might be a good chance for them to, we have so many young assets here. Have a couple of these draft picks. We want that guy who's an NHL player. Now we want to start actually adding NHL guys. So the Penguins have an enormous amount of leverage, even though they have guys who have no trade clauses. Still, for the guys they do wish to move, people are going to be knocking down the door for them, because they're giving up first-round picks like candy right now. You don't usually see that this time of year.
And I don't know who has what Edmonton has as far as their picks, but let's just say Raquel to Edmonton for number 1 pick. He plays with Jesus. I'd rather have Raquel than Edmonton's number 1 pick that's number 29th.
Well, that's the thing. In a bad, in kind of a crappy draft, too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just like, listeners and you guys know, I'm not big on draft picks. I'm big on human beings. Show me a guy's face. Show me a 6'3", 210-pound left winger with some hands and a mean streak. Hey, in the AHL, come on down. You can have Raquel. It's just a number that I got to trust some scout to pick. No.
And I think Kyle has made it pretty clear to other general managers he would much rather have a guy who's ready to play in the NHL right now, or a legitimate prospect who's very close to being ready. And I always go back to what Jim Rutherford always said. I would say, Jim, Jesus, you trade draft picks like crazy. Like, you got to keep a few of them. He'd always say, like, I don't care about draft picks. Like, even a third-round pick's probably not going to make a dent in the NHL. He said, no, prospects are the ones I don't like to trade. And he would always bring up Jake Ensel. He said, once we had Jake for a year, like in our organization, we knew what we had. We weren't trading him. We'll trade a second-round pick or a first-round pick, but you don't want to give up those prospects. But Dubas is in a spot where he can say, you know what, I already have enough draft picks now, thank you. I don't need your first-round pick. He might take it in a certain circumstance, sure, but the preference absolutely is on prospects and young guys who are ready to play. So it's going to be a really interesting few days. And I did want to mention this too, guys. The trade deadline, for those who don't know, is Friday at 3:00 Eastern time. That will be noon in Vegas, where the Penguins are. I have been told, the Penguins are going to make moves. We all know it, and they might make a move or even a couple on deadline day on Friday. Don't be surprised if they make a move or two earlier, just because they have to play in Vegas that night. And they don't want to be in a spot where, oh, shit, we just traded 4 players and we only can dress like 18 people against Vegas tonight. Not that it necessarily matters if they win the game or not, but that's how people get hurt when guys are playing extended minutes and things of that nature. And it would just be kind of embarrassing for the organization. It's hard to get people, from Wilkes-Barre to Vegas or whatever the case may be. So don't be shocked if things get rolling here earlier in the week that they don't wait until Friday necessarily.
Do they carry extra people? Is there a rule with the NHL where you're allowed to bring up some extra people just for that scenario?
They can have a couple. They usually do have a couple of extra skaters, of course, the healthy scratches, but I still think there's a limit and there should be. And Corey, they shouldn't even have games on trade deadline day. I really believe that. I think the league should go cold for a night. And I think the deadline, they should pick a day of the week that, Monday or what. There's never many games on Mondays anyway, right? To me, the deadline, just make it a Monday every year, and teams just don't play that day. And I know these guys are millionaires and we'd all love to have their jobs, but the stress that they're under, think about that. You got to call your wife at 2:00 and say, hey, honey, I just got traded to Winnipeg. Sorry. We got to move the kids and we got to do this. And then you got to play a game 2 hours later. I think it's incredibly unfair to the players.
Yeah.
Now, do you know what could be enticing? I just thought of this. Raquel and you get rid of Jari, or Raquel and Graves.
Yeah.
You want Raquel? Well, guess who's your number 6 defenseman?
Yes.
His name's Ryan Graves. He's hot with 1 assist.
Yeah, and we're not keeping any of his money either. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's another situation the Penguins have, Joe. Yes, they want draft picks, prospects, NHL ready players. Those might be the big 3. Unloading salary is the 4th part of this equation, and that's in play right now. I wrote in my article, I said, it's like a team at the draft. They're going to take the best player available. Well, right now what Dubas wants is the best situation available for his team, and one of those aspects is getting rid of that salary. So if somebody wants Graves or Jari or Carlson, hey, sure, it might be a long shot, any of them, who knows? But if teams are desperate enough, why not? Why not ask them anyway? It doesn't hurt to ask. And there are so many teams right now, Joe, that fancy themselves Stanley Cup contenders, and they should. Who's the favorite right now? I don't know. There's not one. There's one of 10 teams that could win the cup right now, and those teams are all desperate. And there's probably 22 teams that think they can make the playoffs right now. So you have all the leverage in the world if you're the Penguins, and the cap's going up starting in July, so that helps them. So I'm fascinated to see how this unfolds. But Kyle's not going to have a whole lot of sleep the next few nights. I'm telling you that there's going to be a very busy time for him.
Now, I want to throw this out to both of you because we're talking about not getting rid of Raquel. And I'll where did that comment go? He ended up deleting the comment. Oh, no, here it is. So Kaplan, she put on in an article, and I think this is more of a hypothetical, but a first this year and a second next year for Rickard Rakell from Utah. And I'm just not saying that deal specifically is going to happen, but I don't know. And especially Joe, you said, if you sweeten it with a Tristan Jari, okay. I love you, Raquel, but it's time to go.
Well, they're not going to give up a guy who wears their letter A, who's had a down year, but he's a playoff kind of guy. That's Lawson Krause. You want to give me Lawson Krause in a second? Maybe. Or they have Maxi, or the Michelli guy. He's been in and out of the lineup. He's got a little spunk. He's got some hands. He's having a down year. I got to see faces for Raquel.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's fair. But it's an interesting example. Utah's another team. Probably not a playoff team, even though they have a chance with the way Vancouver. So did I. I know. Yeah. With the way Vancouver is faded, that final wild card spot's really wide open in the West. But Utah's, I put them in the boat with Buffalo a little bit in that, okay, maybe they're not a contender or a playoff team even. but these are teams looking for NHL players right now to kind of build for the next couple of years. And now is obviously an opportunity to get some of those guys. So they're not your typical buyer in that sense, but there are teams out there like that. And the more teams there are like that, that only helps the Penguins even more given their situation right now.
As Penguin fans and just as Rick Tocchet fans, friends, admirers, you got to be rooting for Vancouver right now, because if somehow they lose and don't make the playoffs, Keith, I'm spacing on his last name, from the Flyers to go out there with a pot of gold and beg Tocchet to become the Flyer coach.
It's funny you say that.
And then I'm going to jump off the Smithfield Bridge.
Joe, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about you Tuesday last week before the game in Philly. I was talking with a couple of reporters there. And for those who don't know, Tocchet's contract's up at the end of this season. This is the last year of his contract. And he can't be happy right now with how things are going. He had the JT Miller fiasco, Pettersson, not Marcus, but Elias. Like, I don't know what's wrong with this guy. But there's something seriously wrong with him, and Tocchet's not getting through to him, obviously. Rick's got to be frustrated. I know Jim Rutherford won't want him to go anywhere. I know what Jim thinks of Tocchet. I'm sure they will try to keep him there. But I had a couple of people in Philly tell me, if Torts wants to leave it anytime soon, Tocchet's the guy they're going to go after, as they should. You couldn't blame the Flyers for doing that. So, I don't think you're alone, Joe. I think a lot of people in Pittsburgh should be hoping the Canucks go on some kind of a run here and figure this out. Just to keep Rick happy in the Pacific Northwest, because nobody wants a friend of the magnitude of Rick Tocchet, who we all love, back in Eastern Pennsylvania. I don't think anybody wants to see that.
No, I mean, even just the commercial when sometimes you see him, he uses his Flyer credit card and sometimes use the Penguin credit card. It makes me dry heave when I see him use the Flyer card.
He's the only guy who's cool enough to pull off both, though. Is there anybody else that is beloved in Flyers and Penguins circles than Rick Tocchet?
Not
many.
Well, and not to pull the and of course I blew it on the trivia game we played a couple of months ago, but the wrecking ball.
Yeah, I suppose, but I don't know. Even Tocchet's just such a Philly kind of player, right?
Oh no, I just mean that it's beloved in both uniforms.
Yeah, I guess he'd be the only other one, right? I mean, that comes to mind. I know there have been guys who played for both, but those two are
John LeClair.
Yeah, Penguins legend John LeClair is a very nice man, by the way.
Yeah, he ran Gino in camp.
He did. But so I don't know. There's a lot of things going on around the league that are not conventional. Like, this team's good in a cup contender. All kinds of stuff. Vancouver's a great example. What's Vancouver going to do at the deadline? Jim, this is driving him nuts what's going on, and it is not Jim Rutherford's way just to stand pat. It is his way to either blow that team up or go make a big move and try to get them going again. I imagine it'll be one of the two for Vancouver. So I don't know. For a hockey fan, the next 4 days rather, it doesn't get a whole lot better than this. For those who enjoy the drama and the trade deadline, it's going to be good stuff.
Well, someone was floating out of Pettersson for Rantanen.
I don't know I wouldn't want anything to do with Pettersson right now, to be honest.
I wouldn't want either, but I mean, if Rantanen's not going to stay in Carolina,
and they know it, right? I mean, why would he? He never said he wanted to be there. They don't like to spend money. There will be teams that will. It only takes one to throw big money at him. He hasn't really played that great since he's been there. He's played okay. I don't know. That's another great storyline. We've kind of heard it suggested a little bit. Maybe they're just going to flip him and say, all right, we screwed up. The guy doesn't want to be here. Carolina, a really good team. I don't know if they're a cup team. They've never gotten over that hump, at least not in this generation. But a lot of good teams have a lot of questions they have to answer in the next, 96 hours.
I'm hoping for that trade just to keep talking in Vancouver, because he'd love to play. I'd love to have Rantanen flipping over. Rantanen would really improve that team a ton in Vancouver.
If I were Vancouver, I would make that trade in a heartbeat. Actually, if I were Carolina, boy, I don't think I'd want saddled with Pettersson's contract at the moment. I'd be quite concerned.
I don't know what happens with that guy, because he's not worth $6 million the way he's playing.
I saw somebody tweeted today that since the trade, JT Miller has more points than Pettersson has shots on goal.
Oh,
I mean, Pettersson and Team Sweden was playing him 9 or 10 minutes a game. They they clearly weren't impressed with what they were getting from him. This guy looked like a real superstar a year or two ago. And I mean, if Rick Tocchet can't get through to you, like I trust Rick Tocchet as a head coach so much, just based on so many guys who have played for him. I mean, he can get through to Phil Kessel. Sidney Crosby. This is one of the few coaches. Sid would let Rick completely dictate the power play, and Sid would go with it. Like there were other coaches, Sid would be like, I don't know about this. I think we should try this. When Rick Tocchet talked, okay, talk, whatever you want to do. So he commands that kind of respect. That Vancouver situation is just a total mess.
I'll tell you one, we haven't been doing our up and downs for a couple of weeks, but one guy that came out of the Four Nations, not on fire, but playing very well is Zibanejad.
Yeah. No, he has.
He's turned it up. I mean, I think he got scared to get sent to Ottawa or somewhere else. He knows
what that's like. No, you are right. He's been very good. That Rangers team is another one. Are they buyers? Are they sellers? Are they any good? Do they stink? Like there's a lot of things in play there. And I saw the Rangers last weekend in Pittsburgh, or the weekend before last. And like, I thought they were just pathetic. They won the game because of the Penguins goaltending, but they played like a team that hates each other. Like there's something seriously wrong in Broadway right now.
I'm personally pulling. I mean, I think everyone should be, if they're not aware. They're on the verge of getting in that top 13 pick, where the pick that we acquired from Vancouver becomes the first round pick next year, which to me, if I'm Kyle Dubas, I'm sitting there watching Gavin McKenna play, and I'm saying,
he doesn't
everybody
suck.
who's got a first round pick who might stink next year, I will sell anything but Gino and Crosby to get it.
And you're right, Corey. And that actually makes me think of the Raquel situation again. We talk about what would it take to get Raquel, and you want players and not picks, and I agree with that. But if I'm going to trade Raquel, and if I'm talking with teams about proposals, I'm way more interested in a team's first round pick in 2026 than I am this year, even though you have to wait an extra year. From everything I hear, yes, McKenna is the best prospect since Connor McDavid. So if you get lucky with the lottery ball and you get that number one pick, you're set. But even aside from him, apparently the 26 draft is just considerably better and deeper, way more star power than the 25 draft. So if I'm Dubas, you might have 2 first-round picks this year already, at least one that's going to be a good one. I would say, well, if we're talking first-round picks, the conversation begins and ends with 2026. That's the first-round pick I'd want.
Yeah, that's how we could flip potentially Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor for the next Connor McDavid.
Now if that happens, then the people in Toronto that give Dubas a hard time every day are gonna have to shut the hell up. I know
they're gonna lose their minds.
I'm not sold though. I think our division is going to be better, or the Metro is going to be better. I don't know what's Jersey's floundering right now, but Columbus isn't going anywhere.
No,
but I think the Rangers are going to be better next year. I think whatever soap opera BS they got going on, I mean, maybe they might even move, I say the most overrated player in hockey, Fox. They might get him out of there. I don't know, but I mean, some of the young guys, I love Lafreniere. I like Cooley. Yeah. They're gonna get rid of Kreider. It's gonna be they got they'll have JT Miller there a whole year. They might get a new coach. I think Shesterkin will have his bounce back. I wouldn't think that the Rangers are going to be worse next year. That's just me personally.
I thought Colorado did them a favor this weekend. Honestly, that helped them financially. Kind of a weird trade for Colorado. It didn't make much sense to me. But the Rangers, as long as they have Shesterkin and he's healthy, they're not going to crumble. He's probably the most physically gifted goaltender in the league. So that gives them at least some competitiveness just because of him. The only thing I'll say about the Rangers, though, they're older than you think. They have a lot of guys in their 30s now, so they certainly require a retool. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that pick, if the Penguins end up with the first pick in 25 or 26. But yeah, the Rangers they're another team. There's so many teams. The Rangers, Vancouver, and some of the other teams we've mentioned. We don't know what they are before the deadline. Do they stand pat? Do they do something really aggressive to try to get in the playoff mix, especially if you're in the East? There's no favorite in the East. Washington's an incredible story, and they're probably going to be the 1 seed. Does anyone think they're going to be in the final? I don't. The East is so wide open. If you just get in, it's one of those years where literally anything could happen. So I don't know. I'm just fascinated to see how this works out for so many teams.
The teams interest me the most are the Dallas Stars, both of our preseason picks, because now they're going to have the LTIR money on Sagan's money. They're going to use all that, and because Heiskanen will be back, according to reports, he'll be back, so they could go get another D or maybe another forward. I think they're still a great team. His stock dropped after 4 Nations. He stunk. Now he's on fire. He's back to being Rupe Hintz again. And I really think that Toronto, they can get, if they could get a little better than a Lars Eller for their third line, and they get another top 4 defenseman, I think this really could be Toronto's year. I know they look like crap against us, but
they might be the favorite in the East right now. I know sounds funny, but they might be.
Yeah, Marner somehow is playing better. Austin still got his issues, health related, but Tampa's coming on. Tampa's playing. I guess that's the third team. If Tampa makes a big swing and gets somebody, watch out.
And by the way, I agree. And, just to foreshadow a little bit, about 6 weeks from now when the playoffs start, if Toronto wins that division, and they might, we're going to get Florida-Tampa probably in the first round. That's going to be an unbelievable series. That's what I'm hoping for. It'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah. And Florida with the long-term IR Tkachuk money. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens between now and Friday at 3:00.
And who made a great point is the only other man I trust besides Josh in trade rumors is Elliot Friedman. He said the Florida Panthers have an excellent defenseman coach down there, and he's resurrected many careers. If he can get 80% out of Seth Jones, man, they stole him.
You know what? Seth Jones, I agree. Seth Jones is one of those guys in the last couple of years, like his stock really went down. And maybe he never became the superstar that some thought he would, but he doesn't stink. I think he's a pretty good player. And you're right. Florida knows how to coach defensemen. He's a big guy who can play with an edge, which you kind of have to play with an edge to be on that Florida team. He's exactly what they needed. When you look at who was available out there, I can see why, even though they gave up an awful lot for him, I think the market simply dictated that. Just because maybe they overpaid for a guy doesn't mean they didn't get a guy that could really help them. Sometimes you have to overpay for certain people. I think that's perhaps what we saw. So I think he really fits in well in Florida. And don't forget about the Cats. Somebody's supposed to beat those guys 4 out of 7, and it hasn't happened in a while in the Eastern Conference.
And they're going to keep Bennett. They're not going to say, well, okay, if you want to leave, we're getting another year out of you right now. So,
that's right.
The Cats are great, and they're going to have Tkachuk money to spend. Yeah, the Atlantic is just so much better than the Metro.
Oh God. Yeah, the Metro, it's not a pretty picture. No.
I'm not a big fan of the load management in that, joke of a league, the NBA, but, honestly, Tkachuk going down for a length of time, I felt like the Penguins in 18 were, like a Sidney Crosby and an Evgeny Malkin 1 month injury away from repeating. They could have really used that time off because they were just so tired.
The NBA goes overboard with load management to the point that it's embarrassing, no question. But in the NHL, we have seen over time. I think it was 2016 when Gino missed some time with the elbow injury, came back for the playoffs. You play 60 games in a regular season when everybody else plays 80. Don't think that doesn't make a difference. The playoffs are a battle of attrition as much as they are anything else. Yes, you make a very fair point, Corey.
Yeah.
I'm really happy for Steve Mears and everyone in Columbus, Steubenville West.
It's the best story in hockey.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I want to see them and Detroit both make it. I wonder what Stevie Y, they say he's loading up for a big swing this week too, especially with Rasmussen hurt. I like that guy. And he's hurt right now, so he may not be back for a couple of weeks. Detroit's got to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, of course they do. I think that would be fun if they both. Detroit hasn't been in the playoffs in a long time. It would be cool to see that market back in the playoffs. And Joe doesn't want to see Ottawa in the playoffs, and I respect that. It's fine.
As long as we can dump Ottawa off, then that's all that matters, right?
Who wants to see Ottawa besides some mediocre like
I don't even know if Ottawa does.
What do they care?
Ottawa want to watch Ottawa, I don't think. Well, hey, I will have one big question because we got to jump here in a couple minutes, but just a quick one here. It's not gonna a ton of deliberation, but the Penguins jerseys, and I know neither of you are probably the jersey. I love looking at uniforms and seeing like, oh man, that's a great uniform matchup. Like the 49ers and the Steelers. Oh man, this is a great uniform matchup. The Maple Leafs versus the Penguins yesterday. Yeah. Great uniform matchup. There's some rumor circulating that the Penguins are going to have a new alternate jersey next year. And there's the hint was dropped with the Lemieux fantasy camp. If you follow Joe's friend Steve Byrne, he was an attendee at the camp, and they had the Robo Penguin with the bluish gray stripe thing that was a third jersey at one point, but then became the black jersey that they wore in the late 90s. Would you guys be a fan of seeing that come back?
1000% no. What's the first thing the big guy did when he came back? He threw away the Robo. I call it the effeminate pigeon. I never want to see that thing. It looks better when it's in the black and they put the science fiction crap on it, but it's still Howard Baldwin's jinx of 92, of 93, 292, 93. I never want to see it.
I'm not a Robo Penguin fan. Like the white jersey with the Robo Penguin, I really hated.
Yep.
Now, Corey, the one you're talking about, is this it was the third jersey like in the 95-96 season?
Yep. Yeah.
And it became good luck, so they wore it. I think it was the Nedved 4 overtime game they were wearing those jerseys, right?
Yep.
I don't hate them, but I don't love them. Like I enjoyed when they would wear the blue stuff from the 70s. I actually just in terms of visual appeal, they were beautiful. I like the Snoop Dogg diagonal Penguin sweater just fine. I'm not a Robo Penguin guy. I never have been.
No, I think the Robo Penguin in general needs to be taken out back and shot. It needs to die. And then sorry for all the censorship out there that I said shot.
That was a violent turn, Corey.
I know.
But listen,
for all what do you call that? With all I whatever trying to say, I lost for words. I do have a Robo jersey because I wanted to get a Captain Ronnie Francis when he wore the C. So with all whenever you say,
that's
I forget
fair.
The term,
you have to wear.
So I do have one, and it was like having a UN badge around the world, and anywhere to wear it. Oh, Ronnie Francis, we love it. As opposed to getting bottles thrown at me in different cities, like Ronnie Francis, because that was kind of like my UN pass. I do my favorite uniforms though, and I barely remember that they were the ones I remember when I first started going to hockey games. Is the dark blue Penguins.
Yeah. Oh, they're beautiful.
That's my favorite. Other than the, I think you can see behind me. Other than the Steeler kind of black and gold, the Lemieux Stanley Cup era black and gold. The dark blues are my favorites.
I like those. I'd like to see those come back more than the anything Robo Penguin related. And I think the best third jersey they've ever had is the gold jersey. The one that they wore a couple years ago, the solid gold. That one's pretty great. But to me, I like where they're going, at least with it. I don't think they're gonna mess with the home and away. I think they've kind of figured out
that's who they are.
This is a Steelers level uniform. This is a Yankees level solid top to bottom. Don't change that. But if you want to mix in one every once in a while, then we can, maybe make some extra money and we can all throw it away. And but I would love to see, Joe. I've actually been calling that for a while. I want to see the dark blue 70s jersey. We've seen the powder blue. Let's bring the dark blue. I could just start a whole Penguin fashion podcast and just go on.
I thought of it. Full disclosure is what I was trying to say 10 times. Full disclosures. I have a Robo jersey. I have a question for Josh, or kind of a statement and a question. Is that just another slap into the Lemieux ownership era? They're going to bring back why would you bring that back? I understand. And second is I heard that Lemieux was at the Penguin game, but not on the Jumbotron. Now, does he say I want to be on it, or is that ownership being jerks?
I know there was a game last year that he was there, and he asked somebody with the Penguins not to put him on. He didn't want to draw attention to himself more than anything. He was at the game. I'm trying to think. Last weekend it was the Rangers game, the last Sunday. I know he was there.
Yes.
I saw a bunch of the guys from fantasy camp. Saw Big Artie and Max Talbot and all these other guys walking around. I know 66 was in the building. They didn't put him on the screen. I don't think that's an FSG thing. I think FSG would love to have a better relationship with him. And I think they're probably smart enough to know that would help their cause in Pittsburgh. But I don't think the ball's in their court right now on that one because of some stuff that happened. But he was around. And as we know, when 66 is around, that's always a better thing for Penguins fans one way or the other.
Yeah, that's what I'm just like. How I was just like, how would they not want him on the drum? Like, how could he not?
Yeah, I don't think. I think that's more of his request, honestly, and that's not even him, throwing an FU to FSG or anything. That's just him being private and just.
Yeah, no, I would never even think that it was like him as an FU. I'm just thinking him being like, I don't.
Yeah, that's probably all it was. But he was around. He's around more than people think. I mean, he still goes to games on occasion and. He just very much in the background at this point.
Hey, me and the big guy, I'd watch, put a DirecTV channel like 594, just Lemieux cam. I just watch him golfing and walking his dog.
I know. It's like those of us of a certain age and from Western Pennsylvania, that's the effect he has.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. Well, hey, that'll do it for us this week.
I got to get to the airport. Sorry.
Yeah, he's got to go to Denver, guys. So, hey, just so you know, last announcement, we are going to do multiple episodes this week. We'll be doing one on Thursday. We'll be doing one on Friday, all covering the trade deadline. So subscribe to everything here. Go to Joe's show on Saturday. There will be no Penguin game. Yes. You can go to Joe's show at the Low Lev Brewery. That's this Saturday. What time, Joe?
8 and 10, 2 shows.
8 and 10. Excellent. So if you like to drink, go to the 10 o'clock. It's the live show, and that's the more lively show. If you want the more quiet show, let's.
No, they're both great. And go have a cool one with my buddy Val Nikushkin. I love that guy.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know if that's what he needs, but you got it.
Well, it's not the playoffs, so they won't be testing him. They're going to wait till round 3 to test him.
All right, guys. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next week.